I'd like to welcome everybody out to the February the 7th, our first budget meeting. Call this meeting to order. Everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin our 2025, 2026 budget. Ms. Nichols, you have the floor. Here we go.
So,
I've turned it on.
is that not on?
Oh, it's on. It's on.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. So this is I updated the presentation that I've pretty much done most years. So you'll see this is just going to be, if you go to the here, an overview. I added some stuff to this, so we're going to go over the types of funds, kind of go into the general fund mostly, fund balance, revenues, the tax rate, what the other funds are, and then looking forward to this budget year. And if anybody has any questions throughout this, please feel free to stop me. Absolutely. And we can look at whatever it is that you want to look at that time too. So these are our different funds. We have the general fund, the Powellville fund, the Sunset at Sunset fund. We have our accommodation tax fund, beach erosion fund. We now have the capital reserve fund. And then we have the two project funds, which are the Sunset Beach Park project fund and the dredging fund, which the dredging fund right now is a project fund. It will be more of a maintenance fund after going forward after this. Our general fund is the primary operating fund for the government. It accounts for all of our activity that isn't required to be in another fund somewhere else.
I'm sorry, Chair, could I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
With the Palm Cove Dredging Fund, will we run that project out of the dredging fund, or will we make a separate fund for it?
So that most likely will have its own project fund because it'll have its own capital ordinance. So kind of like the Majestic Oak, where we just did the capital project ordinance for Majestic Oak. It will have its own guidelines and have its own structure. So you can have two projects that come out of the same fund. So we'll just have to look at it and see.
Because somebody else is paying for that, wouldn't it be wiser to keep that separate?
Oh yeah, it'll be separate. The capital project ordinance also keeps it separate. So it may be that we use that dredging fund and then set up a separate fund as a maintenance fund.
As the maintenance fund.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So our general fund balance, the fund balance, so LGC, which I put up here, is the Local Government Commission. It's the division of our state treasurer's office that has been designated to provide resources, guidance, and oversight for all local government units that are subject to the General Statute 159, which is what basically governs everything that I do. Everything that pertains to finances in local government statute 159. They have kind of changed how they base and how they look at fund balance now. They've started putting out a report that suggests where your fund balance should be. So they now have these peer groups and they put out a report every year saying, this is what the lowest fund balance is in your peer group. This is what the highest fund balance is in your peer group. Here's the median and here's your average. So in our peer group with the budget, they look more at budget than they do at population, because a lot of times now the budget means a lot more than what your population is.
So they look at your the dynamics of where you're located, like we're a
they
seaside
don't
community.
look at that as much. That's more of something that the town council and finance has to look at. So coastal towns obviously and any outside factors, you have to take that into consideration in your fund balance. So coastal towns, they do want coastal towns. You want to be a higher fund balance because you have a higher threat of hurricanes and economic factors such as tourism and things like that, which I actually put that on here
Yes.
as well. But so this kind of gives you an idea of the highest fund balance in our peer group is 563%. Basically, what that means is that instead of having a capital reserve fund, like where we had moved money into a capital reserve fund, that town, whoever it is using their fund balance as their capital reserve fund. So they didn't want to mark their money as capital. They wanted to just keep it in the fund balance and let that fund balance build up in case they needed it for operating.
And use it for whatever they wanted.
Just in case that, for whatever reason, they decided that they didn't want to use it on capital, that they wanted to bring it right back into fund balance, they could. It was more flexible. So they're just letting that fund balance build up so that they can bring it right back in if they wanted to. That's most likely what that is. They're saving for something. Or they had a match, a grant, and they're saving for the match for the grant. It could be that as well. So that it's an outlier. But so the median is around 97 and the average is around 98. We are, I think it was, I meant to write down what we're at, but I think we're close to 100 right now, I think is what it was. We typically try to stay right around that average. So.
And just to clarify, this peer group you have now is less than $10 million. And that's why, because it's from the FY 22 to 23.
This is just for a general fund. Yeah,
general
22,
funds.
23.
But ours has been above that for
it is.
for a number of years now. Okay.
They had us in this peer group. You know, I just looked at Sunset Beach and grabbed Sunset Beach out of there.
Yeah.
This is where they had us.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right.
Right.
That is interesting. I wonder why they had us in that.
So you feel
I'll go back and look at it.
Well, that was FY 22, 23. So things have changed
could
since
be.
then. Yeah.
And you feel very comfortable with us being 100% as the
Yeah,
finance director?
We're in a good position, and we have the capital reserve fund set up now too, and you're starting to add to that, which is a really good practice because you know you're going to have capital purchases coming.
Thank you.
So these are the reasons for having the strong fund balance. These come straight from the treasurer's website, the LGC's website. It's for cash flow, and that cash flow is basically when they say cash flow, it's because of when taxes come in. So our fiscal year starts at July 1, and people don't typically pay their taxes until December or January. And so if you have a really low fund balance, where people get hung up on that 8%, if you only have 8%, that's 1 month. And so you're not gonna be able to carry over until the taxes start coming in. And then maintain a stable tax rate while having consistent service levels, avoid short-term borrowing, reserve for emergency, unforeseen events, unexpected opportunities, increase investment income. It helps protect your credit rating and obtain lower interest rates on borrowings and avoids the LGC warnings. And then these are our different types of revenue that we have here. We have our property taxes, we have the fire fees, motor vehicle taxes, and then we have our intergovernmental, which is the sales and use tax, and then the other governmental revenue, which is sales tax on electricity and video sales tax, telecommunications, solid waste. There's a lot of like small ones in there. And we have permits and fees, service charges, grants, special assessments, and then occupancy tax. We'll go into those a little bit more. I have slides on those individually as well. Fiscal year 23-24, these are the actuals. I just kind of put them in a chart for you, and they're all broken out here on the side. And so our property tax, we budgeted it at 44% for 23-24, and then it came in at 39%. The actual doesn't matter as much as where you have it budgeted because things can come in. So if we had a whole lot of grant money come in, that percentage would have come way down. So where you budget it is really more of what matters, because you could have a significant amount of grant money come in, and then that's going to throw all of your numbers off. But so we're right where we should be for our percentage to the ad valorem tax. It's the one thing that we have control over.
The ad valorem tax.
Mhm.
The ad valorem tax is the one that we.
Property tax, yeah.
Property tax.
So this is a breakdown. I like to put this in every year because I don't know that it's really obvious to citizens that we don't get your entire tax bill. So the majority, when you pay your taxes, the majority of the tax bill goes to the county. So it's 68% of your tax bill goes to the county and 32% comes to Sunset Beach. So I just used the average home, I think, is in Sunset Beach. If you look it up, it says like 460,000. So I just used 400,000. And so your total tax bill for just property tax is $2,008. And so $1,368 of that would go to Brunswick County and $640 would come to us. And then 1 cent change on property tax for an individual, if you had a $500,000 home, would be $50, or if you had a $400,000 home, 1 cent change would be a $40 change. So, county fire fees. So the fire fee revenue that we get can only be used for the fire department, and we use it for the operating costs in the fire department. The fire fee revenue that we've had, the increase over the years has not been due to significant rate increases. It's mostly been due to increase in the number of homes. The continued growth in the new construction, both in the city limits and in the county jurisdiction that we have, which is in the fire district. That's been what has been driving the fire fee revenue, and will probably increase. Brunswick County has been saying that the fire departments have changed and that there's been a reduction in the number of volunteers, so which has caused an increase in the need for more firefighters in the paid fire departments. Motor vehicle tax has become more of a reliable tax over the years due to them tying that to the vehicle registration. You pretty much can't register your vehicle if you don't pay the tax. So there's almost 100% collection rate on motor vehicle tax. Right now, for us, it makes up about 1.3% of our revenues. So it's around 148,000 for last year's budget. And so sales and use tax. On all of the listservs that I'm on, this is still a hot topic for everybody. It's not changing. A lot of municipalities rely heavily on their sales tax, and it looks like it is flatlining. And counties have been looking at it more and more lately. But one of the things that has gotten put in place, I think it was last year or the year before, is that it used to be that a county could come in and in April say, we're changing how we do sales tax. And then a municipality would have to scramble and fix their budget before July 1. Now the county can't do that. The county has to wait a whole year. So they make the decision it cannot go into effect for a whole year. So it gives the towns a whole year to prepare. So that's a huge positive for sales and use tax. It gives everybody a year to prepare for a change. If Brunswick County was to change how they distribute sales tax, we could lose 28% of our sales tax, which is a big chunk because we get, I think it's like, it's a
That's a good
pretty
chunk of money.
pretty big
Yeah.
chunk of change.
Wow.
Did not write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 million.
1.9 million.
Yeah. So
Has there been more talk about that lately? what you're
no,
hearing?
I'm not in Brunswick County. It's just been a rumble on, like, sometimes we have listservs that go out, and there's different counties across the state that are kind of talking about it. I mean, they're not going to come out in a meeting and necessarily tell you that. So it's not something that I'm hearing in Brunswick County.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
you just kind of,
Hold
when a
on.
county starts needing money, they start getting antsy. So.
Mhm.
But I haven't heard anything from Brunswick County. It's just one of the things that we pay attention to.
Good.
And then the other government revenues that we have is the utility sales, beer and wine, solid waste, ABC local, ABC law. These we have no control over any of these. We are conservative with them. The League of Municipalities, they have somebody on staff that does projections for these and sends them out to us every year because we really don't have any way on the local level to know what's happening inside with these. There have been attempts in the past to remove some of these, like the ABC revenues that got shot down. That was a few years ago. So that didn't happen. But they are saying, the last I had heard, that these are also don't look to have any increases in these again this year. Some of them have gone down. The utility sales, especially electricity's gone up some, but like the telecommunications and the video sales and all that are going down. So they kind of maintain right where they are because of that. But altogether, they're not a significant amount of money, but they are a piece of the pie where
Mhm.
if you lost everything, it would be significant. So then we have the permits and fees. So building inspections is restricted and can only be used in the building inspections department. And then we have zoning fees. These are variable and sensitive to economic changes. We've seen that in the past. The building inspections does have their own assigned fund balance so that we can track and make sure that it definitely is only used on the building inspections department and has to be reported in the audit showing that it actually has its line so that it doesn't go anywhere else.
Does this cover their pay and salaries
Mhm,
or just
yeah,
operating costs?
everything building inspections, anything with them, their capital, salaries, anything in that specific department. That's kind of why we broke them out.
What
a
about
couple years after I
what about our
started.
fixed plant here in the town hall? They obviously occupy a portion of the building. Do we get to prorate that as well?
I haven't really looked into that too far, but I mean, that's something that we can definitely, I can look further into that part of it.
Okay.
And then service charges. So we have recycling, the beach wheelchair rentals, special events, and the violation and fines that kind of put in there with this. And those are contingent on compliance. Depending on whatever happens with the paid parking, this is the category that would go into as well. Then we have our non-recurring revenues. These we don't really budget for. We do budget some miscellaneous revenue, but not a lot. The special assessments will have an idea of what will come in for that, but we'll be conservative with it. Just to kind of look at the trends of where it is and the best that we can with estimating that. But for like grants and things like that, until you get them, you don't know if you're going to get them until you're actually approved. So you can't budget for it if you don't know. In 22-23, we actually had $2.9 million in grant funds, the loan proceeds, sale of surplus, donations. That included the transfer of ARP. So we had a huge year that year of things coming in. And then in 23-24, we only had 71,000, but we actually were awarded a lot in 23-24. We just didn't get that money in yet. And so then in 24-25, in July and August, we had a lot come in. And so it'll show that we had some things come in 24-25, and it varies where it shows up.
Would you say here, Tara, that would have been equal to 10.8 cents? 10.8 cents on the tax rate, or 10.8 cents on what?
So if you had if we didn't have those,
Yeah, didn't have.
what we received for that would have been 10.8 cents. So
Or we just wouldn't have gone with those programs.
Right,
yeah,
yeah, right.
like that's what it would have been equal to. Like
Yeah.
if we had to buy that stuff or
Okay.
Mhm.
whatever. Mhm.
Now, the ARP was the COVID relief funds.
It was.
That came in.
Yeah,
And it's a one-time shot.
it was.
Okay.
That's right. Good job.
Yeah. So these are just some other comparisons. So for us here with the federal and the state and the county, like the other revenues that we get outside of property tax, that's just like something to kind of look at. This is not going to happen. We're not going to lose all of our other revenue sources. It's just that if we lost all of those, that's what our tax rate would be.
But there's a lot of communities, there are a number of communities that have a tax rate of 40 cents.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Actually, so I'll show you on the next slide. I did some comparisons, and I've done this pretty much every year. This is where we're at with Brunswick County. In 24-25, they had the reval a couple years ago. In 24-25, I think it's 5-6 of the municipalities actually increased their tax rates. And then, so I know a lot of people think that we became one of the highest in Brunswick County, but we didn't.
There's a thing on the news last night that said that Southport was looking at a 2-cent increase in their tax rate.
Yeah.
And they're also cutting fire and police expenditures or funds. It's quite a story.
actually read that this
It's quite a
morning.
story.
I did. So I also looked at like some of the other coastal towns. Just I don't like to compare us, but I know that happens a lot. I know. So Surf City is in our group of population, and they have police and fire, and like we do. Their tax rate is at 41 cents, with the county being at 65.5 cents. And their tax base is almost exactly the same tax base as us. So they're just a couple $100,000 off of the tax base from where we're at, which is in comparison very, very close. Their median home value is actually higher than ours. So it's like close to 700,000. And so that was an interesting comparison to me as I was like looking through to kind of see where we do sit on this.
So what was their tax rate against Surf City?
It's 41 cents.
41 cents. Okay. Thank you.
And then there's some places like Emerald Isle that actually oceanfront charges more because they don't have, I guess, the accommodation tax where they have the beach nourishment. I'm not sure, but they charge more on the oceanfront. And I didn't see too much into that of what was going on there.
So they have a different tax rate based upon where you are in the
where
town?
you are in the town. And I
Ouch.
saw that in different places, and I'm not sure what that was. But luckily, we have the accommodation tax, which helps with that. So, because we have the beach renourishment portion of accommodation tax, so that's good. That's a bonus for us.
If we can keep that going up a little bit, would be nice.
Yeah.
Don't bank on it.
I know.
On the last column on the right, you show increase 24, 25. Does the percentage or the cents per hundred just to the left of it, is that representative of the change up there, or is there more?
So that's the last column
Mhm.
on that is what their tax rate is right now.
Okay,
And yes, so that was the increase from the 22, 23 or 23, 24. Yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, that was, so that's their 24, 25. They just put 24.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I added we haven't done this before, but I added the other funds. I know there was some questions about Powell Bill Fund and things like that recently. So I added those in here just to kind of give an overview of what these other funds are. So Powell Bill funds they're actually determined annually through the North Carolina state budget. They are distributed through a formula. 75% of the funds are appropriated by our population, and 25% are appropriated by the mileage of our public streets that
Where's
we
that money
own.
come from? Is it gas tax?
I'm not actually, I don't know if it's the gas tax. I know it's an
Well, it's for
appropriation in
roads,
their
so I figured
budget.
it would be
Yeah,
gas tax.
yeah, it could be. I'm not sure where it comes from in their budget.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
That's
an
it. I was curious.
allocation from the state's budget, but where they get it from, I cannot remember what that is. But they distribute to the qualifying municipalities. To be able to qualify for that, you have to submit multiple reports throughout the year. So we have to, every so many years, we have to send in a map. If anything changes, we have to send in maps, and they have to be certified. I have to send in, or as finance director, you have to send in certified statements and expenditure reports showing what you've spent the money on, that you're following the rules, and they actually do pay attention to it, and they will come in and do an audit, and it has happened. And they have a website that clearly states how you can and cannot use the funds. And I've been to multiple trainings with Powell Bill, so they're
I'm curious here. It says that 75% is based upon the population, which means as we grow as a town, as more homes get built, let's say, even if there are no new roads don't come in, that's 3 times what we'd get per mile of added road.
right.
So when we took over maintenance of the significant number of roads in Sea Trail 2 years ago now, that meant that our Powell Bill funds went up.
Yeah, so since I've been here since 2018, and Powell Bill funds have gone up significantly since I've started here.
Okay.
I think when I started, we were getting around 70,000 per allocation, so that was around 140,000.
Mhm.
And now this year we've gotten 202,000.
And when Angels Trace comes into us,
I don't
right
know
at the
exactly
first-
how
at-
much
at
it
the
would
first
be,
of-
but
the
it would.
1st of July thereabouts, then we will get mileage for all of those roads
Mhm.
added into the Powell Bill.
Well, the roads don't exist yet. So
Well,
I
they
don't know.
will at some point
Okay.
when they come in, but they become. Yeah.
And it also depends on how much the state allocates. So if the state increases the budget for the towns, then each town gets more money. If the state decreases the amount of the budget, then each town gets less money.
So it's not a strict formula then as to how much money we
you
get.
get a chunk of money, and then
But we
how
don't
it's
control the chunk.
distributed. Right. Yeah. The formula is how it's distributed, not necessarily the total dollar amount.
And our annual reporting shows a surveyed map of where all the roads are,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're dirt or gravel or pavement.
Yeah. Oh.
Good.
So now we have the capital reserve fund. This fund is a budgeting tool for funds to be set aside for future capital needs. Once it's designated for capital, it must remain that way. The specific project or item can be amended. So right now, I use the example that we have the fire truck. If there was a need for some different vehicle or a need for a different item, we can come to council and you can amend which capital it goes for. It just has to remain capital.
It has to remain in that fund?
So to use it, you'll move it out of that fund into the capital project. Like
Okay.
you don't ever expend anything out of the capital reserve fund. It would remove it, so it would create a capital project and move it to that fund for
Okay.
the capital project. And they're capital project funds, which right now is the Sunset Beach Park and the dredging. This is where we create the ordinances, and you have a budget, and that budget will stand until that project is completed, so that it can cross fiscal years, because you're not going to want to have to do that budget every single year for that project, because that project's got to finish. So they created this type of budgeting tool to finish projects out so that it can cross over the fiscal years.
And we've added Majestica Park
Correct.
into that fund.
Yeah.
And do we deal with paving districts, let's say, as an example, differently? Because I noticed you did not have a fund set up for, if we want to pave 3rd Street and the people agree to it, we put the money up, they reimburse us when it's over, if they elect to want to go through with the program. You don't have to set up you set up a different kind of fund for that? it more
What
of a
we've done
temporary-
here has been very small.
Okay.
It hasn't been they haven't been very large projects.
Okay.
So I think that the projects haven't lasted for but
Couple months.
yeah.
Okay. So it is, so we do those a
kinda
little bit
depends on
more
how-
casually.
Hmm.
And in the case of the property owners coming to us to pave a specific road, that cost would be recognized in the general fund, because we would special assess 100% of those funds, and they would come back into the general fund.
I see, it's different, so I see that,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no grants or
Right,
there's nothing
right.
else involved in it. No. So then we have occupancy tax, where we have the local act that gives us authority to collect it. And occupancy tax includes the 1%, it's 6%, includes 1% for Brunswick County, the 2% for beach erosion fund, and 3% for the accommodation tax fund. And the 3% that we have for accommodation tax, we have the original local act, which allows us to use it for criminal justice, fire protection, public facilities and utilities, health facilities, solid waste, sewage treatment, control and repair of waterfront as related to tourism related. So anytime that any kind of tourism related expenditures would have any impact on any of those things, we're allowed to spend that 3% on it.
And the 2% for beach erosion, we don't have beach erosion. We have not
Yeah,
had beach erosion.
right.
But can this also go for walkways or other things like that support the beach? Okay.
Yep. So I have the I'll jump forward for that. So we have the beach erosion fund. If you go,
Oh, I didn't know you were, okay, never mind then.
wait. Okay.
It's coming. It's coming.
That's okay. So I started with accommodation tax, which is the 3%, and this is one of the hardest things for us to forecast, just because there is a lot of factors that go into it. We just kind of keep it stable, steady, not really knowing. The economy has a huge impact on it, the weather, the possibility of people moving into their secondary homes and making them primary residences. It typically generates where we can transfer money into the general fund. So we've talked about this fund a lot.
And
Let me ask a question, please. Under the general statute that we have using the accommodation tax, we have the flexibility for the tourism-related expenditures. What would change that? What do we have to do with our accommodations tax that could cause that to be revised and have to go into the rules that affect the
If
other
we did
counties?
anything to this, it would cause us to have to create a tourism development authority, and then we would have no control over it. And basically, an authority would be set up, and they would collect the money.
Okay, we would lose flexibility to use it. And what is categorized as doing anything to this?
If you tried to reallocate the money for a different purpose. So I think that came up a few years ago of trying to use the beach erosion fund money for a different purpose. Yeah. And that was when we had started to look into what would happen if we tried to repurpose the money. And
Outside of this tourism-related category to
Right.
do that.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make it clear that the point is we cannot mess with that fund. There are guidelines on what the money can be used for,
Right.
which for us is fairly flexible related to tourism.
Yeah.
But we've got to be careful not to go outside the bounds there.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And Tara, at the end of the fiscal year, if there's money remaining in the accommodations tax, we are allowed to put that into the general fund.
Yes, because of the wording saying the criminal justice and
Yes.
streets and
Mhm.
utilities, and all of our tourism has an effect on everything for the town because
Sure.
we have such a huge tourism related that comes into the town.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have the beach erosion fund. This is the 2% portion of the occupancy tax. These are restricted to beach renourishment, but we have part of that is access to the beach. And so we have found that the way that we're able to use that is, for us, the most useful way to use it is using it as a supplement to the grants for the walkways for beach accesses.
Are those grants that we received, are they matching funds, or does the fund, or the money outright without matching funds? Or,
So they're matching. So we've
Use
been
this
using
money.
the beach erosion fund as the matching for the grants.
excellent, good, thank you.
And it's not necessarily a 50-50 match. It just depends on how much money they have to allocate.
Okay. Okay. That's wise use, good.
Okay. So this is looking forward. This is our budget this year. So accommodation tax has all been in this one department, and I have been trying to talk to different department heads, and I kind of sent an email out. And one of the things I really want to do, and we had the end of season meeting. So I think the best practice, I think what we're going to do is break it down into 3 departments, have a beach rescue, a beach patrol, and then a community parks and recreation department. So everybody kind of has an idea of where their budget is. Right now, it's like all kind of tossed into these lines. Nobody really knows where their budget stands in that accommodation tax fund. So much more transparent. It'll be easier to understand and maintain and know what we have there.
So you'll budget it for each of these 3 department or groups.
Hmm.
And we don't have a community parks and rec department, but I guess that's DPW for picking up trash on the beach and
You'll have a department.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
Sorry. In this budget, you will have a department called Community Parks and Recreation.
yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the other things that's on here is some of the things that are getting kind of jumbled together, kind of pulling them out and kind of pulling it apart to not have so much compounded into one of the departments that is very condensed to me is that public buildings department. There's so many contracted services and things are kind of stuffed in there, it feels like to me. And so a lot of that is like maintenance and park maintenance and things like that. And so pulling that out and having like the community parks and recreation department is like kind of like the buildings and grounds. The community center can kind of come out into that. And then the one of the pieces for me thinking that way is Sunset at Sunset. So Sunset at Sunset is becoming much less self-sufficient. And so if I can bring Sunset into general fund and have more of a, we were talking about building inspections as having an assigned fund balance. We can basically have the events have an assigned fund balance. So if there's like sponsors and if it looks like, it's exceeding where if revenues are coming in and she's doing all these sponsorships and it's actually exceeding what the expenditures are for these events and things like that, we can have an assigned fund balance to boost it and actually be able to do something like that. And so we can create this department within the general fund instead of having the Sunset at Sunset fund that's just going to dwindle down and become zero potentially. Just kind of bring it in and have it there.
Can I, just as a clarification, you're using the term departments. Okay.
Like public works and
Okay,
police department.
but Lisa, you said we are going to add a community parks and recreation department that'll go along the same lines as the fire department, police department, and that.
She said
But
in the
you've
text
got
about
beach rescue and beach
10%
patrol
this afternoon.
as departments. Those are separate line items under the police
Well, I'll go
and
there.
under the fire. Is that correct?
So there's going to be in the general fund,
Yeah, I'll go.
there will be a
Thank you.
department
Thank you.
of community parks and recreation in the general fund.
Yeah.
And then in accommodation tax, there will now be 3 departments
Thank you.
as well. So you have general fund, which is fund 10,
Yeah.
which you have administration, and then there's lines, and then you have finance, and then there's lines, right?
Okay.
And then you have another fund, which is Fund 21 accommodation tax. And you have fire. Right now it
Okay.
says fire.
My point being, we're not creating new beach rescue departments in the town government structure or beach patrol. Okay, thank you.
We're not creating any new positions. We're not creating any new expenses.
Yeah.
It's just a way of showing the expenses and
Yeah.
more of a
I would call
Managed.
them break down into 3
Sub-
budget line items
Sub-department.
inside the department. Is that sort of correct, at least in my understanding? No. No.
they're I mean
Okay. Let's drop that. You
We
can
could-
educate.
okay, well,
You can
I
educate
can
me
show
separately.
it to you like
Yeah.
when we go through it. I'll be
Yeah.
able to show it to you as as
Okay.
I bring it to you because even if I put it on paper,
Yeah.
you're not adopting it that way, but
Okay.
you'll be able to see it on paper.
Okay.
But
But
basically,
we
I'm
are
trying to make it
not
more
going to create a
transparent.
new
We're not
beach
creating-
rescue
we're not creating
department and a
anything.
new beach patrol department in
No.
the town government.
No.
But we will create a community parks and recreation department. Okay. Those are separate issues. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
As we go through this budget process, we'll be educated on this,
Yes.
is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Sorry,
Yeah.
didn't mean to confuse you.
Okay. That's a good question.
Yeah, so we're trying to like look forward and kind of be prepared for what's coming and so the other thing that we've kind of talked about is Lisa had mentioned that there are potential for 2,200 homes within the next 5 to 8 years. And then in the fire district, there's a potential for 7,100 units in 5 to 8 years. So one of the things that we can do for that is have another column on the budget and look out and see what's it going to look like in 2 years, and then talk out what's that look like in 5 years. We need to start to kind of look ahead and see what is this going to look like going forward for police. What is this going to look like going forward for fire? I mean, finance isn't going to change that much, but in the overall scheme of things, but you know, for police and fire, that can have an impact. And so that's one of the things that we're just kind of trying to look at and plan for. So we're going to try to bring that to you to be prepared for, just to kind of see what it looks like for budgeting. And then another option of things that we can do is start looking at a type of a strategic plan. So when you have growth that's coming at you like this, there's like ways to have strategic plans come in and everybody focus in on the vision, everybody focus in on what are the goals, where are you headed, bring everybody on the same page. So that's just some of the things that you can look at for budget.
Thank you, Tara.
Question.
Very good.
Yeah. Question overall. This is, yeah, it is very good. I agree with
Good,
that.
yes.
Will this be posted on the website soon?
We can put it up today.
Yeah, good.
In addition to police and fire, Public Works would be affected
Yeah.
because all roads now that are inside town limits are required to be public roads. So all the roads in Angel Trace will become public at some point. And then build inspection would be impacted by these nearly 10,000 units that could potentially be in our ETJ or inside town limits. So, you know,
we'll do
it'll
all
affect
departments.
all
It
the
was just-
departments. Just to clarify.
We have a new section on the website called Latest News. That she's the boss. Kimberly's in charge, but this might be something to put right there. What we're trying to do is put latest news up there. Maybe put the overview there. Now, in a couple of months, put it back in the finance department or something like that. But we're looking for one spot for people to come on our website and go to and look at what's happening right away. What's the latest of this, the latest of that. So that might be a way to do it. And Kimberly's in charge of that, and she's done a great job so far.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, before you had to drill down deep to find what you wanted that is current. Sometimes
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
easier to have it up
Yeah.
on top and then bury, then put it down below.
Right.
I didn't mean buried. I mean, you know.
That's what I was saying. Put it there and then bury it. No.
Right.
But have it under finance then,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
people can go there and do that.
You can even put them there, both places at the same time
Same
at the
time,
beginning.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
You don't have to
Yeah.
wait 3 months
That's
to do
fine
it.
too.
Yeah.
So what's next on your agenda? You have questions? That's the question.
Yeah. Questions?
I think we've asked
All
questions as we've gone pretty good. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you.
thank you,
Yeah.
Tara. That was well done.
Thank you, Tara. Well done.
So the next thing we're looking for from you all is, I mean, you know that we are meeting with all the department heads and we'll be bringing in their capitals and they'll come before you in the 1st of March and present all that to you. And you know the projects that we're working on, the Palm Cove dredging, we're finishing the dredging project. The Majestic Oak Park has come online now. Is there any projects, new amenities, new services, anything that you all as a council would like for us to research to bring back to you
Yeah.
in the coming months?
I have one, and it has to do with the planning department. And remember now, 23, 24, we had a full-time planning director. For this past 24, 25, or the budget we're currently in, we have a part-time planning director. And the question is this working? Number one. Number two, do we need to increase the time a little bit? Do we need to increase the time to full-time planning director? And that would be something, I don't know. I don't know if anybody up here knows that, but the idea of giving it to staff and coming back with us with a recommendation on planning into the new budget. What should we budget for planning director? Should it be, part-time just like this year, a little bit more maybe needed, or do we need a full-time planning director? So I would leave that to you to come back to us after talking to Carrie and the people involved and so on, and see what everybody has to say about the new budget Anybody
Well,
wanna add
actually,
to
that was one of the very first places I started, and I had that conversation with Carrie and Ron yesterday, and we agree that the trial has worked well,
Okay.
and are going to be recommending it stay the same with the same amount of hours. I just need to talk to the Cape Fear Council of Governments and see if their contract will increase or if we can continue with the contract that we're currently in. And the reason that we feel this way is for the planning board has been doing a lot of cleanup of the UDO rewrite, and those will be coming to an end. And the building inspections department has taken on the other duties for the planning, like the landscape landscape plans. You know, when they're out there doing the inspections for the final CO, they're already there, so they're actually doing the landscape planning compliance reviews while they're there. And then a couple other things have been shifted around that has worked well. So our recommendation is to continue for another year in the manner in which we are proceeding right now.
How many hours does Ron, or days or whatever, how many does Ron have now? The hours he has now?
20.
20 hours? Okay,
Mhm.
that's good. A week?
No, a month.
Oh, a month, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of his time has been taken up by attending the planning board meetings, attending these meetings, and as the UDO, as we get it all cleaned up and as we're going through it and using it, we anticipate those to drop off significantly. The next thing that we would be looking at from a planning board aspect would be the land use plan rewrite, but that would not be Ron, that would be Wes. So that would be a separate contract with the Cape Fear Council of Governments for another of their staff members. That is his specialty. Wes McLeod's specialty is more of the land use plan rewrites, the UDO rewrites. So that wouldn't interfere with Ron. That would be a separate contract with them. I will be talking to the planning board this month to determine if they are ready to start looking at the land use plan or not. And
So-
then we'll be talking with Wes about that contract.
So updates, where it's about now, we should do this land use plan that was done in 2017, obviously,
Correct.
and you're supposed to do, yeah, okay, good. Go ahead.
I would like to see something that's sort of like the town's strategic dream sheet of what items you think need to be done that may or may not be in this year's budget. You've talked about upgrading this building, replacing this building, sort of if we have major infrastructure we're going to add to either the parks or whatever it happens to be, other major road improvements that need to be done. Just sort of a thing that's looking out there maybe 10 years of town projects. You've talked about just acquiring various properties to relocate parts of the department, so to speak, and including somewhere a new location for the emergency occupation center and stuff like that. If you just kind of one sheet that lays out all the wild ideas that the town staff may have.
Absolutely.
that,
We are
yeah.
working on that currently.
Let me just expand a little bit on that. If we could do that once a year budget time, that just what are the priorities now for next year? Now that doesn't mean we can carry them out. That doesn't mean things may shift. You know, all of a sudden you get offered a piece of land or something like that. But the idea is for council at the time to see, here's our plans looking, like John said, 10 years down the road. And then here's our priority list for this budget year and go from there. So,
And that goes along with the strategic planning that
Yes.
Tara
Yep.
was mentioning earlier.
Got a question on, maybe for Tara, on the property tax. July 1, the Angel Logan, or Angel Trace with Logan, they're now part of the town as of July 1 this year. When does their tax show up in our revenue? Will it be in 25, 26?
When were they annexed?
Their
They're-
annexation is effective July 1, 25.
Yeah, so it becomes effective July 1, 25.
Yep.
Yeah, so 25, 26. I mean, they'll be billed
Okay.
right after that.
Yeah, and as the houses get built,
I think
they'll
it would be prorated.
Right.
So they would
Yeah.
pay prorated for the second half of 25 and then also billed for 26.
okay.
And then as houses come online and are CO, then those come in as discoveries.
Yeah.
Now, when does the county, I mean, we've had a lot of houses go up already in the last 9 months. When does the county use the taxes that these people are paying? When do they end up showing up with us?
So I get revenue payments every month. The thing that surprised me, so I just started, I guess the first preliminary roll came out last week, and it wasn't much different than last year, which surprised me. So I'm guessing that they haven't updated it yet. But they typically, so it was the 2025 preliminary tax roll is what it says. And it's this program that I have to get into. They don't make it easy, actually. And so I went in and I actually pulled it before I came in here to see where we were based at. And it didn't change much. And I was thinking that we had more houses come online. And so it's one of those things that we kind of have to watch. We don't really bring revenues in until March, or I think it's more towards the end of March, because they now will start updating that every week.
Okay.
And so I think it's more of they just haven't really updated it yet. But
we should be
as
able to
they
get an
pay-
idea
as
by
they
look
pay it with the
by
next
looking
month.
at the occupancy permits that the building department has issued in the last year.
Yeah. And I've been
and-
trying to keep track
Yeah.
on a rolling Excel sheet as
Yeah.
to what they are.
Yeah.
But I wanted to find out from her before I
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah.
it.
And I've made a note. We'll contact the tax office. We'll contact the tax office and find out when those rolls will be uploaded, upgraded.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you.
It's like,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm fine.
Bless you.
thanks, Sarah.
All right.
I've got another one. This is not a big one, but just can we get an update on how the municipal building has been doing? Money coming in, use, that kind of stuff. We just, it wasn't too long ago, we got that building and we set some fees and all that kind of stuff.
The what building?
The
The
municipal
Community
community
center.
center. I'm sorry.
Community center.
I call it the municipal building, community center. We
Mhm.
Yeah, just get an idea on how it's going, how much is it used? We set fees and all that. How is that going? Do we need to lower fees? Could we get more, if we need more use, could we get more use by
Advertising.
lowering fees for like clubs and activities in Sunset Beach or something? I'm just going off the top of my head. I don't know.
Amy is actually reviewing all of the fee schedule right now for
Oh.
all of her amenity centers,
You
and
guys are
we'll be
good.
working on that. And she has created a community calendar that you can see anytime that the building is being used.
Oh, good. Great.
It
So-
basically says it's a private event, but it at least
Mm-hmm.
gives you an idea of how often that building is being used.
It's right on the website now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Maybe send a notice out telling our community that it's on the website to
Mhm.
keep everybody informed.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
And use that. I know you take care of the Sunset Town Government Facebook page. I think you do, right? But if you wanted to, on that latest news that Kimberly has for the website, throw that right up there, so people will know. That's great. Thank you.
You know,
Guys
we
are
got some
clairvoyant here.
amazing new employees.
I'm telling you.
Anything else? Not ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to resolution House Bill 24. Y'all have had a chance to read over this. Just asking that we join in with some of the others to support this. What's the pleasure of council in regards to this resolution?
Anybody need any
Lee-
clarification on this?
Lisa, you want to
Why
perhaps
don't you clarify?
clarify for
to public?
anybody who happens to be listening?
Okay, I'm on now. Sorry. In the latter part of 24, the state legislators passed a law, Session Law 2024-57, that enacted that no local government could initiate downzoning without the consent of the affected property owners. And what that law did to the municipalities, the governing bodies, is that it essentially froze our zoning ability and greatly diminished the roles of the local government that's granted in the Constitution, and changed the way that we could manage growth in our jurisdiction. So the local municipalities within the state are banding together to ask that that portion of that bill be redacted, which would basically give us our power back. In the state of North Carolina, we can't do anything that state government does not give us the authority to do. So that's what this House bill is doing, is asking for the state to give us our power back.
I could help you a little bit there also. I just happened to look up the definition of downzoning. It says when a local government agency rezones a parcel of land once previously zoned for a more intense use to a more restrictive use. For example, going from commercial to residential, going from residential to agriculture. I guess a lot of local governments have been doing that, sort of protect land and not have so much building and so much clearing of land and all that kind of stuff. So it's a less intense use of land is what they talked about.
And another example would be changing a setback from 5 feet to 7.5 feet. That would be considered downzoning. Or reducing a district's permitted uses, even though they may be going to a more likable permitted uses. If you take a permitted use away, that's considered downzoning.
And if you take one away and then give another zone 2 more,
Still downzoning in that one zone. So there's a whole lot of confusion with this bill from the local municipality standpoint. And Ron has got his thumb on this and has given the planning board monthly updates. So I encourage anybody to go back through the last couple of months and review the planning board YouTube videos and hear what he's saying about the downzone, or about this Session Law 2024-57.
And obviously, if this goes away, we would have more control over development in our communities. That's the key to the whole thing.
Right.
What's the pleasure of council in regards to this resolution?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution of support for House Bill 24.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up,
Thank
we're looking to go in closed session pursuant to 143, 318, 1186 to consider a personnel matter. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll
Do I have a second?
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all for coming out today. Do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
If there's nothing else, do I have a motion to close this meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan.